Imagine a world without prejudice, bullying, or fear. Imagine a world where our individuality is respected by all our peers. Inclusion and equity are more than words or just a ploy. They are workplaces rich with diversity, creating worlds we all enjoy. Imagine a better world where we all can live free and play, where the spirit of teamwork and solidarity give hope and light the way. Good business isn't just profits or pushing for sales. Good business must strive to be just as it scales. Good business is planting a seed and a visionary trail to foster an environment where diverse abilities prevail. Let's build that new world in solidarity. Diversity rocks innovation. Let's build solutions for equality to bring and transformation. Let's honor co-creation, honor individuality, with a vision for togetherness beyond screens and virtual reality. All it takes is a little to change the world a lot. Money comes and goes, but legacy isn't forgotten.
Welcome to Diversity Rocks Innovation Volume 7. 多様性が革新を起こすへようこそ. My name is Jackie Steele. I'm a longtime Canadian political scientist living and working in Japan, and also the CEO and founder of Enjoy Diversity and Innovation. Enjoy is a Japan-based global-facing business working in English and Japanese and French sometimes, and we're committed to providing research-based policy expertise and evidence-based diversity, equity, and innovation strategy to support companies. We truly believe, and we know that diversity rocks innovation. And so this live stream is going to shine a spotlight on the beautiful diversity of all of the Enjoy D&I thought partners who are making individual efforts to bring inclusion, diversity positive environments, and gender equal leadership into the world in their own unique way. So through this live stream in particular, we are engaging in what we call thought partnering out loud. And I learned about this practice from a leadership coach in Seattle named Izumi Yamamoto. And it really stuck with me when she talked to me about this. And she said, oh, Jackie, if ever you want a thought partner, just let me know. And it really struck me as such an important lifelong learning practice that we can use as adults and as children and in all ages, and to build solidarity with others and help them roll their projects forward and their thinking forward. And for me as a business, as a feminist business committed to furthering democratic equality and reciprocal giving of ourselves, respect for differences across leaders and stakeholders, this is a key practice that we are using for the live stream, and we hope it spreads across Japan and the Asia Pacific. So each week I invite one guest, and our goal is to show up without our business cards, without any hierarchies or senpai-kohai relationships, and we're just humans thought partnering out loud in defiance of all of the social hierarchies that really trap a lot of our identities on the day-to-day living basis of how we experience others sometimes in a negative way. So today we're going to enjoy a horizontal relationship. We will enjoy learning about each other's diversities and our radical individuality and how that really makes for a collegial exchange of expertise, worldviews, identities, and experiences that can really change the world. So I am so pleased to introduce today's guest. She figures among the women who I'm featuring in our special series in commemoration of the 10th anniversary of the triple disaster that hit Tohoku, Japan on March 11th, 2011. We remember it all too well. For me, it was an experience in northern Sendai, living in a relationship with a 7-month-old child and then trying to figure out what to do and how to survive for the next month and 2 months and whatnot. And struggling with how to fit in with the diversity of my own family formation at that time. And from that, I started thinking about, I had been working on research and law reform from a feminist perspective and around diversity and women's inclusion, but I'd never thought about disaster risk governance and emergency management. And that sort of kicked off my last 10 years of research working. And I was so honored to be able to partner with Megumi Ishimoto here today for a participatory action research project that we began in 2015 with her organization called NPO Women's Eye. And so, Megumi, welcome to Diversity Rocks Innovation. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Jackie. I'm so happy to talk to you today.
It's going to be a fun conversation, I am sure. There's so many things for us to relive and to go back over and to discuss in this volume 7 of Diversity Rocks Innovation. And I guess what I'll maybe encourage to start out with, if you could, I know there's a lot of things we've talked about in the last 5 years. It feels like longer than that we've known each other, given all the times that we've come together for collaboration. But for those who maybe don't know as much about you, maybe you could start with introducing, what is core to who you are, who is Megumi Ishimoto, and let's think about your journey pre-311, pre what the events of 311, and we will get into those.
Okay.
But maybe first we can start out with, where did you come from? Where have you lived and been raised? And how do you identify sort of your core identities and your core values?
Wow, that's a great question because, I was always asked, where were you at the time of the 311 and what did you do after the 311? So never really was asked before that. I'm from Wakayama Prefecture. I was born in a very small inaka countryside and grew up. And I liked the music American pop, rocks, sometimes punk. And I had several milestones that really, led me here, who I am right now. One of the important thing is when I was 32 years old, I was working in Osaka City, working as I was high school graduate, never really went to university, and also was working as a temporary contract worker. And I wasn't married, I was single, so, and I was enjoying drinking a lot of wine. But one day I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen after 10 years to me working as temporary workers? Will I be still having job? And will I be alone? Will I be, with not much good education? I mean, I don't say I was okay with high school graduate, but I always had kind of a complex in me. So one day I decided to educate myself. I started to take a correspondence college class while I was working full time. And then I switched to night university. And after I graduated university, it took me like 5 years. But
That's
then
a lot of dedication.
yes. It was hard, studying and having full-time job, but still I enjoyed it very much. And before that, I was always thinking about myself. I was worried about myself, but then after I started and I kind of, I don't know, I feel like I finally got a space in my heart that allow me to think about something else. So I started to see what's happening in the world. I mean, in a society, in a community. And then I was working in the American company. And at first I was working as part-time. Then people around me, including my boss, was watching what I was doing, studying, kind of, working hard. Then I became a contract worker. It's a bit better, better situation than the part-time. And then finally I was promoted to a full-time worker. So I started to get involved in the CSR project. And that really made me think about the issue around me. That I was very lucky to have this opportunity to work for the project called Kids International, that working with a high school student living in the how to say that, orphanage. Yes.
Yeah.
So I met many different kind of high school students, but it was very difficult for them to think about their future like I was, but more in a severe situation, because
Right.
many of them said that they just don't believe the adults, or they think there is no future, really, because they don't have any family or the things like that. So I really started to think because that was a CSR project, I really started to think what CSR project can do, and this could impact people, life, and the community, really, and the social issues.
And it seems like so fascinating that in some ways you graduated out of high school in a sort of, I guess, a normal upbringing with your two parents present, and then went into working part-time, gradually decided maybe that wasn't going to help you long-term. So you started thinking about how you could support your life and your career opportunities, and then thought about the re-education. I mean, it's not common. I mean, I think you were one of the first people I met who said you had gone back to do university as what we would call in Canada sometimes a mature student. Mm-hmm. And so when adults go back to retrain, if you will, and get university degrees later in life, you don't really hear about that much in Japan. And so you were one of the first people I went, wow, that's so fascinating that you thought to do that. And then you decided to do that. And then you did it. You just had the courage to just say, well, I'm going to be in these courses with individuals who might be, young, 10 years, my junior in terms of age, and you're at a different stage in life. But you just thought, well, if you want to get the education degree while you work, that was, your choice. So then to think how much empathy you must have had for these high school students when they're also wondering about their future already. They haven't even graduated yet, and they're already worried about their futures because they don't have a family, they don't have parents to look out for them and help them. You were obviously in the right place at the right time to be the sort of mentor, if you will, to understand maybe what they were going through, and then to help them think through how they could just think about their life in a positive way that gives them hope. So how did that allow you a chance to, in some ways, pay forward your own learnings?
Oh, yes. At the first, right after the project, one of the kids, high school students, asked me that, one of the project was teaching them English and also the culture of Japanese culture as well. And she told me that she wanted to keep studying English. And also, she didn't think she could go to higher education, but she started to think maybe she has opportunity. And so I think I did like a mentoring with her. I didn't even know the name of the mentoring back then, but I met like once a month, and I gave her a homework and teaching English and talks, how their life are and how my life is. And I think it took like 2 years or so. So, and I saw her that she found, the supporter, personal supporter who will pay for her college tuition. And she got into college. Then she decided that she wanted to do more. And she started to have her own dream that she wanted to work for a travel agency so she could travel over the world. And then she also transferred to university, and she did graduate the university, and she got a job in the travel agency. And I guess I did more than 2 years with her mentoring, but I saw her, life is changing, and that's because she met this project. Maybe that's one of the reasons, but she met this project and she met me, and she started to think her potential in herself. Then I thought, wow, really? And
so powerful.
Yeah. Well, because of this project I met, and I decided to do a master degree. That's where back then I thought I will study much more on the CSO project so that I could contribute.
Well, and, I think in some ways we start out, and I guess that's maybe why I think thought partnering is such an amazing practice, because I think you can start out with, you're just holding the space for another person to talk to you about their ideas, to talk you through their fears, to talk you through their concerns or their anxiety. And you just kind of listen, and you can hear their thoughts, and you can partner back to them and say, well, have you thought about this? Or what do you think about that? And just even that exchange of having a space of somebody who can be a sounding board, who has your back, like who's on your team and really wants the best for you and just wants to help you move your ideas forward. And I know we often call that coaching, or we call that mentoring, but I think at a very basic level, even without, I think, those formal terms or names or certifications, I think thought partnering can be a much more one-on-one, just horizontality of supporting each other in thinking out loud and developing our ideas about what we want to do for ourselves and how do we get from point A to point B. And I think if you can imagine that young teenage girl didn't have parents to do that thinking with, or to go through that with, or someone who's older, and can give that kind of sense of feedback and who's on their team. And if you did that for 2 years, you were probably one of the most present adults in her life, maybe at that time, really holding space for her.
And then, I learned more than she did.
Isn't that amazing, right? I mean, that's the best part too.
Yes. So I convinced myself that we go back to university. I did 5 years working and studying, and that was tough for me. But I thought I could do something much more, not only for me, but for something for the society. Oh, that's what I thought. And then I kind of and then I became a very good negotiator. That because to go to do the master, I had to take some classes, and I had a full-time job, and so I negotiated with my boss. He was a CEO at that time, and I was his executive assistant back then. And then I negotiated with him, like, please, I'll come early, start early. So could I just have 1 extra hour for the lunch break so that I could go to university and have 1 class and come back, right? Wow. And so I will work overtime as well. And I'll negotiate with other assistants as well, please cover me, please. And they were all nice. They all helped me. And I was working for GE that time, and it was I learned so much from the company and from my boss and from my colleagues.
Wow. And wonderful that they had one of the things that certainly I think we've been hearing about for 30 years in Japan, as well as other countries, but particularly it's acute in Japan, is the rigidity around FaceTime hours in the office, and how that works against so many other facets of our life in terms of caregiving responsibilities, of course, but also lifelong learning opportunities to be able to take that at that university class when it's offered, and flex work allowing for you to, if you're getting your hours done and you can arrange to have a good collaborative way of covering each other amongst colleagues, why wouldn't it be, encouraged that here you are improving yourself and bringing more skills to the company through your studies and your masters, but sometimes that's just shut down on a procedural basis. Well, no, your working hours are 8:30 to 6:30, and so there's no flexibility, and so no, and the answer becomes a procedural no. And so many women in particular, but also men, of course, face these challenges. And if we can move to more, so you obviously you had a very progressive, I guess, or more open-minded. They were more flexible and willing to allow you to innovate and have time freedom for yourself to manage your schedule a little bit to be able to combine these two.
I was kind of desperate because I really want to do, but I had to, make money for my own living as well. So I had to negotiate, and I can say that the people think that it's not really possible because I have a full-time job, and my time is fixed. But depend on the boss, depend on the job. But yeah. If you ask, maybe something could be arranged if you can't do the first wish still. So anyway, I got in, and that was very tough 3 years because I never really imagined how much I had to read and write. And but I got another opportunity that I started to study more about the social enterprise. That was quite new back then, and from a CSR social enterprise, then also nonprofit organization. Because my professor told me, Ishimoto-san, you can study CSR but CSR would probably need a partnership with more Japanese nonprofit, NPO, NGO, but NPO, NGO are still not so much not so mature yet, and you better study that part. And I was kind of thought, oh, that's a great idea. And that's how I started to study nonprofit organization in Japan, especially fundraising issues, and also PR marketing kind of thing. That's they should more. They're too busy. I know.
Right.
After 10 years, but back then I was just reading, writing, and then thought, oh no, non-profit. They're really doing good job, but they just focus so much on the field, and they don't PR or say enough. And so they should write. They should do that more. And but now I know how difficult it is.
Right? There's a burnout factor when you're responsible for fundraising and strategic direction and implementation and mentoring your team all in the same, breath, really, without a huge staff, right? It's always a shoestring staff to work with. So that's really challenging.
Oh yeah. And then I was lucky to get a grant, a study grant, research grant, small research grant, so that I was able to go to South Thai for a week or two for research, for my own research. So I visited Burma, Myanmar, undocumented immigrant community in South Thai, and I visited the nonprofit. They are also the Myanmar people who are helping their own people in the community. And I was there, and I didn't know about them. I kind of asked my friend, do you know anyone, like any organization? And she introduced me, and I just wrote email. I want to go there, and I really want to do the research. I have this own theme. And then that nonprofit replied me, okay, Megumi, I will pick you up at the airport. That's the only contact I had, and I believed it, and I flew to the South Thai, and I was hoping, please someone be there. And yes, I was picked up, and it was really good experience for a week or two with the Myanmar community. And the one thing I really learned there is she took me around to her schools that they had their own school to teach in for kids, because the community was like they had 3,000 people undocumented living in South Thai. So they have many kids, and the not safe jobs because of the status, and many difficulties of the no insurance, health issues. So they had supporting health, providing schools, providing anything to live. And she took me one place she told me that this is one of the most poorest community, and I visited there. And you can't really say it's a house. It's just a wood, and you can get in there, but like the windy. Yeah, if the rain comes in, and it's wet and humid, and so I could smell the really, how do you say, it's the not nice smell. And I could say that, I could hear the everyone, it's a very noisy place, like, people are living like that, kind of slum. And what I learned is that before I've been there, I was there, I just imagined what the community is like and what's great job they're doing, but I didn't really know what smells like, what it looks really like, and what I could hear. So I really thought to me, it's important to be there and to feel that how it is like.
Well, and I think our full body sensory lived experience of something, of course, goes so much deeper into understanding and seeing it with our own eyes, having the what our body also then takes in of observation, not just reading about it or knowing it at sort of a cognitive level, but actually experiencing it and experiencing the individuals, and then how much more that resonates with us. And I think it helps us have a window into the lived realities that otherwise we wouldn't be able to make the next leap of empathy. And really feeling a sense of solidarity around, wow, this is not what I expected, right? And I can imagine now, if we pivot the conversation slightly towards then the events of the Great East Japan earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown, of course, at that time. And so now we've got this rich background on your trajectory prior to 3/11 and who you were and what you were pursuing. But then let's zoom in now to the events of 3/11. You were working in Tokyo, I believe, at that time.
Yes.
And how did you, I mean, all of the things you've just told us now about what you found to be important, obviously, I think enriched your decisions in the immediate aftermath of the earthquake. So maybe talk us through what you were living and experiencing on 3/11 and then your thought process thereafter.
I was in Kanda in Tokyo. I was on the 5th floor of the building that I was working, and God, it shakes so much, right? Even in Tokyo. So we evacuated to the near school ground. So many people, so packed up people there and watching at the building shaking still because of the aftershock. And some people started to watch the iPhones but we couldn't just move, So I think we stayed there like a few hours. Then someone started to say, there's a tsunami coming and there's a news. And I think we saw that first image of tsunami and this very small, tiny mobile phone of someone, because mine didn't really work that already with bad connection. And then I was with my colleague, and she had a small child, and she was so worried what's happened to her kid. And she said, Megumi, I really want to go home and really want to pick up my kid to the hoikusho.
The daycare?
Daycare, yeah. So because she couldn't really get, and she couldn't get any information at all, right? No connection.
So stressful.
Yeah. So we decided to just start walking. So we walked to, we lived in the same direction. So we started to walk, and I think we walked it took me for 3 hours maybe. But I was lucky that I was living in the Tokyo area. So I was able to go back to my home. But then, so after I got home, I started watching the TV. What's happening in Tohoku in the TV, on the TV. Yeah. And back then I was still had a job working in Tokyo. So I still went to Kanda office every day and did my work. But then, I'm sure everyone was just kind of praying for Tohoku back then and just crying and was shocked and so worried, and everyone thought what we can do there. So I was one of them. And back then I already decided to leave a company and to pursue for my next career. That's totally different from the company job. And I had a time, I thought. So first I was still working, but I took a day off and went to Ishinomaki in early April to do the volunteer work and also to be there and see what's really happening. And I was really shocked to see the devastation of the scene, and I was there. So it also changed my life, the scene, to be there.
So like when you said you went to Myanmar, or you went to, you saw the Myanmar living conditions, when you were there and seeing it at the grassroots, and then when you went to Ishinomaki for the first time, and really saw for your own eyes, how did that impact your next decisions?
Well, I had to go back, physically I had to go back to Tokyo, but I couldn't live like before. I couldn't think like before after being there. And I knew what's happening in Tohoku from the news and the TV, but it's just a personal experience that was different, just to see, as long as I see the devastation continues, and that's I don't know. I decided to go back to Miyagi Prefecture and to do whatever I can do. So in May, I was able. I didn't need to go to the company anymore, so I went to a volunteer. That was my, my first plan was just for a week or maybe a month, but it continues many years.
So did you quit, by that point, did you quit your job so that you could go up and do sort of a month of volunteering, or how did you arrange that?
Oh yeah, actually, I told my boss that I will leave my job and I will quit, and 3 days before the 3/11, and so I kind of was just ready, to go. But my first plan was because I started nonprofit in Japan and also the developing countries and international NGOs. So back then I wanted to study. I wanted to work for the international NGO in the Asia. I was thinking going to Bangladesh back then.
But little did you know that sort of all of a sudden Tohoku would become decimated by the tsunami to the point where it was now like in the conditions of a developing country, right? Of having to start from ground zero, of rebuilding all of those communities and starting really from scratch. And that was now in your home country, in Tohoku, as a reality, which meant you didn't need to go all the way waza, right? Go traveling all the way abroad to be immersed in that kind of work. You could actually help at home. So when you decided to go, how did you choose where to end up and where to volunteer?
Well, at first I was checking any volunteer opportunity, and I was checking all the information, and some international NGOs were providing volunteer opportunity, but very strict that I had to prepare everything with tent and sleeping bag and everything, all the food and waters and everything, and I had to be there from this day to this day. That was exact. But then I was still working, so I thought it was difficult. And then I was checking, and I found a volunteer center, RQ Citizen Support Center, that was providing opportunity for, kind of anyone like me that with no experience. But the representative, he said, you can do anything, you can come right now. So we provided the opportunity. So I thought maybe even I can go. Then I registered, and then I went in early May. That was the start.
And fairly soon into your volunteer work, you can maybe describe for us how you became involved and how perhaps you ended up building out, I guess, the support services for women in particular, right?
Yes.
Share us about that.
So, I wanted to do something, but I never really, I had no knowledge or I had no interest in gender or women's issues back then.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. Right? A lot of women are in that boat, and that's not surprising, but I think it's interesting, right? It's interesting, but it's not surprising.
Right. So more than 10 years ago, I had no knowledge, but then I just met the issue. I just saw the issues. I just heard so many voices that there are the issues, especially for women, and so after 3 days, I arrived in the volunteer center. The city and the local women's group decided to start women's support for in the evacuation centers, and they invited volunteer group as well. That back then in the volunteer center there was like more than 100 or 200 people coming from all over Japan, or some of them are from the world, all over the globe. So they thought it's good that city and local women's group and volunteer center all together will work for the women supporting evacuation center. And so because I told them, in the volunteer center, I told them that I can be flexible, I can stay long, so I don't have any hope or I don't preference to what kind of work that I do as a volunteer. So they assigned me, Megumi-san, can you go to that women's support project? That was the support. That was the start. So we started to visit the evacuation centers in the many places, all together with the city, the local women, and me, and we were all walking, talking together, and the meeting with the leader of the evacuation centers, and meeting with the women living in the evacuation centers, and what their needs, what's the issues. And so we also, the local women were decided to have a questionnaire to all the evacuation centers only for the women, and personal request that what they need to ask, because we've noticed, all the issues, right? It was two months after the triple disaster. So I was imagining that there must be all the staff are there and the evacuation centers, but yes, there are a lot of stuff, but especially for women's underwears, there are many, but it's not their size so that they can really use, and of course the many kind of products they needed, but it was very difficult to them to speak up.
And it's hard. We sort of take, I think, for granted, and there's increasingly different organizations around the world that are speaking up about period shame and menstrual supports, and making sure New Zealand has decided to have feminine hygiene products and menstrual products available in schools, because sometimes even in New Zealand, which is such an advanced country, but I guess there's challenges around, do girls stay home from school and absent themselves because of shame or concerns around period shame. And so, if you can imagine in a post-disaster context, you're in an evacuation center, and your choice is to go up to any of the men who are the heads of the evacuation center, or the leaders of the evacuation center, who pretty much are all men across, when we look at the research on what the reality was, evacuation leadership, there really was just an absence, right, of not enough women in those roles, or even in public facing, service roles, so that women could say, well, I don't really want to have to talk about these private things to the head of the evacuation center. And then what do you do in the absence of having another way to solve that? And so, of course, having, and certainly from the research I've done on women parliamentarians, women citizens are more likely to go approach an elected official when it's a woman, because they think that elected woman is a little bit closer to their reality. And if there's issues that are sensitive around their reality that they're worried a man might not empathize with, if it's a man who's an elected official, who's their representative for parliament, they may not go. But we do see a propensity of women to feel a little bit more comfortable to go talk about those issues with a woman elected representative. So we see that at the highest levels for national politics and also to local politics. So of course, in an evacuation center, having your needs, being able to voice your reality and your needs, and thinking that the person on the other side will be empathetic and will be supportive and will hear your concerns and understand them, is such an important piece of psychological safety.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yes. So my volunteer organization was also providing women's products, especially for women. And when they visited, not just only the volunteer evacuation centers, but there were many houses that was, I mean, the house was there. I mean, but still, because of the no gasoline, the the roads were blocked. It was difficult. They didn't have any access to the food or water or anything they needed. So that volunteer center was, driving and many cars and visiting, bringing all this stuff, and they try to match men and women to go together. And I thought it was kind of a really good idea. Until then, I wouldn't notice how important that was. But
true. And so, you've now been working with, and from this, RQ Volunteer Center,
mm-hmm.
of course, was born NPO Women's Eye. And, you can maybe, did you raise your hand and say, well, I'm still here and I'm still willing to help. And so let's build something that can be more of a long-term solution, right? Because there's a point at which Tohoku was such a tremendously huge event that it's not like other earthquakes where it's, there's damage and then like within a month you're back to life as normal. I mean, we're talking, this is going to take a decade or 2 decades to rebuild. So then building the infrastructure, right? The societal infrastructure, the NGO organizations, and the kinds of institutional knowledge and the capacity building that then can stay and keep building throughout the next 9 years is tremendously important for the next step of rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you then move to the next level of creating this wonderful NPO that's really been sustaining women and working with women leaders for 10 years now?
Yeah, well, back then, first, after 1 month, for the first 1 month, I was still thinking of going to Bangladesh after Tohoku. But then the leader of the volunteer organization told us, me and other volunteers who are working for the women's project, he told me that he's been creating this kind of organization for citizens organization to support in a disaster area since the earthquake in Kobe. So he did in many areas, right? And including in China as well. And he told me that because from his experience, there is always we need to support women. There is always women's issues. And he's seen that, and this kind of the huge impact on the devastation. He told me that it will take at least few years, and we really need to start real women's support center. Women's support project, not just project, but really commit. We really need to commit. So I asked myself how I feel. What do I do? And then I've decided, yes, I've seen, for the first time, I already met so many women in the evacuation centers, and I really thought that we should continue and we need to do more. And so on June 1st, in 2011, we created organization before Women's Eye, Argue Women's Support Center, and I became the sub leader of as a position, and the leader of the volunteer organization became the leader of this women's organization as well, because everyone knew about him around the area, and no one knew about me, or other people or as a volunteer. So that's how it started. And so we became our own, kind of organization within the organization, not just a project. So, and
it's like there's a succession building, right? Because you later then took on the role of representative director and became the one leading the organization and building that forward with all the responsibility that entails.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting you in, I guess, 2014, just on the lead up to the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction that was going to be held in Sendai in March 2015. And it was going to be this new international agreement around disaster risk reduction. And I had been working and collaborating with Domoto Akiko's network around trying to do law reform and getting the Japanese national laws to integrate gender and diversity considerations more adequately, but then also the framework shifted towards the international legal framework, and how do we get that text, that agreement to actually hear that the words, we need to take women's leadership seriously as leader, the Women's Agency on Disaster Risk is key to the benefits for all in society. And then how do we think through the diversity point as well? And I was involved in those conversations when I ran into you, and you were so passionate about wanting to build this new, exciting grassroots academies program to help train and raise up the young women leaders in Tohoku. So, that was sort of the beginning of our journey and collaboration. And so maybe you could speak about what have been the biggest successes from your perspective for, 4 years intensely, from 2015 till 2019, having these leadership academies 3 times a year, maybe more, 4 times a year. And then, also doing 2 trips to trips abroad internationally. So can you tell us a little bit about what the big takeaways are for you in terms of how you networked young women leaders struggling to rebuild, and then what have you learned through that amazing project?
Thank you. So in almost 4 years, we did, including the first ones, we did 10 times for each training sessions, but not just one day, but usually like 2 to 3 days mostly. So you have to stay all together, stay over. And I think the network that they got to know each other, so that they are not alone. So, and they can ask for help, and they can talk if they have difficulties, or they can look up, like they can always check the Facebook or other SNS that they can find other, kind of sisterhood, the member that are really working hard, or they were recognized, or they are asking for help. So that's, they're the part of the kind of network of the, not just a member, but something really warm, They, they can just say weak things. Weakness happens, that you are not always thinking that, I can do it and we should try to do it. But sometimes you're defeated and sometimes you feel lost, and everyone have that, and we can share that too. We can show the weakness each other. That's, I think, it's really important point. And also that we try to create the training as comfortable as possible. And we did mainly in Japan. It was in Tohoku, Miyagi, Fukushima, Iwate in turn. And we chose a very nice venue one time I was in Fukushima, and the how do you say, with the a house but was built for the artist. So it's so nice, the place is so beautiful, building is so beautiful, it's so artistic. And that kind of place we always chose. It took us so long to research to find that right place. But then also the food, that we try to find the local, organic, and really good food for them, and the sweets and drink and everything to welcome them. And we wanted to care them, that the people, the women, they come for 3 days. That was sometimes, not for all, but sometimes it was difficult to convince their family or the surrounding people that they had to go for 3 days just to take this training trip.
And I think we underestimate how much of a big ask that sometimes is in rural Japan, where women are really, in some ways, expected to be on call for every member of their family. And
Yes.
They're sort of oyome-san yaku, their daughter-in-law role within the family, and their wifely role, even if they work full-time, and their mothering role. I mean, those 3 hats alone, and plus they have their own parents that sometimes they're caring for as elderly. They've got like 4 caregiving roles, and sometimes they're also working full-time on top of all of that. And these are, right, young women. And so this is what I found so fascinating about having the opportunity to research and track and follow and learn with these women through the academies that you allowed me to join and be a part of, wearing a researcher, but also as a participant hat, so that I was one of the circle, not just an external person, trying to observe, because that's part of also, feminist research methods is about you learn with each other. You don't just stay objectively on the outside, because that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
But figuring out, that those spaces you were curating for these women were a nourishment for their minds, a nourishment for their hearts, a nourishment for their bodies, right? And it was a chance to refresh, I think, and just even have a space to breathe and say, wow, for the next 2.5 days, I only have to worry about myself.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 days out of the year, right? Yeah. That they get to just actually focus on their needs.
Yeah.
What they'd like to eat this morning, what they hope to learn from the day, how they want to spend in community with other women, young women like them. And like you said, also to be able to share about their vulnerabilities, about their lack of confidence sometimes, about the fact that they're having these problems when they try and move a project forward and they're not getting support from the local government or from these different actors who don't understand and don't empathize with what they're trying to build. And getting strategies from other women leaders who say, oh, have you tried that? Have you tried this? We'll just go around that person. That person's a blockage. No use convincing them, go around them, try another avenue. And so the ideas and the thought partnering, right, that can organically happen in that space is so powerful, right? And when I first went to those academies, I sort of went, I feel like I'm experiencing, in North America, we talk about the feminist consciousness raising movement that began in like the 1970s, where literally it was just a bunch of women getting together in the kitchen. They were getting together in the kitchen to talk about what they were experiencing in life and what challenges they were facing. And they were just talking with one another about what they were experiencing and trying to make sense of why they were experiencing what was happening, or feeling maybe disrespected sometimes, or not being appreciated, or being taken for granted on all of the caregiving front. And so it's those organic conversations among women sharing with each other that then builds this natural consciousness around, oh, it's not just me having this experience. It's like so many of us having this experience. And then you can begin to start wondering and asking why we are having these challenges. And maybe it is related to structural inequalities that we built into our systems, right? And it's not their fault. It's not, but they until you can come to that realization that it's not me the problem, right? I'm not I'm not crazy for wanting to try and build more of a child-friendly city in the reconstruction planning. Like, that's not a crazy idea. That's a legitimate idea. That's a real need for women and men and children in the new rebuilt cities. So why can't my voice be heard by local bureaucrats? Or why can't my ideas be understood and supported? And you can get to the point, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's why. And we knew how difficult for them to even come, for some of them. So it was for us. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a very good team that I couldn't do it by myself, right? I have a really good teams who are professional trainers, and including you, participated, provided the diversity ideas and thoughts and the leadership. And also I was so grateful because, how I knew how hard it is for them to come, and how high the hurdle to come to get there. And also that I recognize them. So it means that they are recognized in their communities as well. And I knew how hard it is to be recognized as a young woman. They don't call them leader, but kind of, someone who are doing something. And it's not easy in the small community. So
And
I
huge.
Yeah, I just admire their courage and their actions. They are making a difference in each communities. And so that's the place that the Grassroots Academy was built. And we also grew, because of their voices.
Exactly.
Megumi, moms can come without any daycare or support system. So yes, that's right. First 2 times we couldn't do it. So from the Grassroots Academy in Iwate in 2016, I think, we decided to provide a full takuji.
Yes, on-site caregiving for the children of the participants, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant solution.
For 3 days, and at night we could all, with kids, we can all have dinner together, and so that many of them started to join us with kids, and you too.
It's such an important inclusion mechanism, right? It requires a lot of institutional support because you need to hire trained daycare workers, or hoikushi, or people who really you can entrust with the children so that they feel safe bringing their children. And then it's a hurdle they don't have to deal with negotiating on the home front. If they say, "Oh, but I can bring the baby."
Yeah, that's right.
Then there's like one less argument or one less hurdle to participate, to have this right, this freedom to come and learn for yourself and for your own development. And I think there's so much I still want to hear from you. So maybe we can run a little bit longer than I had initially expected today. But I think these are the devils. I always say the devil's in the details of women's inequality. And in terms of getting women's empowerment, the devil's in the details. It's do you have an on-site daycare, provision so that these young child rearing women can have those options to participate and don't feel shut out because of caregiving responsibilities that might be a challenge. Do they, are there other supports that can be offered? And how we think through the details of their lived reality, the really details of their lived reality, and then what they're facing to be able to get their families to support them to leave. And so impressive then that you did 2 international week-long academies.
Yeah.
And that these individual women, they started out locally, they did the 2.5-day trainings, they learned, they went back and, they shared back to their families, I think, and they shared back to their communities. And they managed to then get more support and permission and buy-in, and really to be able to go a week abroad for this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
A whole week, which I know we often, and I think those of us who've lived in different big cities, maybe take for granted that, if you're not living in a multi-generational home anymore, where you live with your grandparents, you live in 3 generations, and therefore there is a lot of caregiving responsibilities that falls to women. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of, women in Tokyo or in Osaka or in major cities around the world maybe don't feel that pressure that if they want to go out, they have the freedom. If they want to go on a trip to somewhere, they have that freedom. If they want to go abroad for a week, they have that possibility. But so many women in rural Japan with these caregiving realities, right, and embeddedness in a multi-generational home, maybe do not have that. And just even thinking about that piece. You were so courageous. So talk to me about the first training that you built with iLeap in Seattle, and how that how that was transformational.
Yes, it's also related to me studying that. I also started to take a leadership program for my own in outside of Japan, because I was also one of them, the grassroots academy participants. Like I faced so many issues, but it was thinking really small things, but I couldn't really see from a different point of view. And I started to participate, one in the Tomodachi Leadership Initiative in 2013, I think. Then I met several different kind of leaders, and the 2014 I participated in Boston JWI, Japanese Women's Leadership Initiative by Fish Family Foundation there. Oh my God, I was treated so well that they provided every detail, like everything I drink, everything I eat, everything, all the sweets are so beautiful. And I felt like, oh my God, is it very expensive? Or I felt like I was treated so well. I was welcomed, and the venue was beautiful. That also I myself experienced how I feel that how beautiful the venue is matters, and how the food is matters, and the atmosphere matters. So, and the 2016, I participate Vital Voices Women's Leadership Program in South Africa, and where 50 women leaders from the globe were chosen and got together. And I saw one woman with a small baby, she said like 8 months old baby, and she was participating. And the 3 other women, they said they're pregnant and they were participating, and they're right. And of course, they checked with a doctor. And the one woman from Brazil she took her mom to take care of the baby while she was attending the program. And that was all okay. The Vital Voices was trying to everyone how we can be comfortable, how we can participate. It's not because they're pregnant so that they can not participate. Because they have a baby, they cannot participate. But they try to include as much as possible. And I thought, oh my God. And anything is possible. And I think it's really important that I experienced myself as a participant.
And it's exciting that they helped. In some ways, there's this, they're diversifying, they're challenging the stereotypes around who can be a leader, right? And then, oh, well, if you're pregnant, you need to take a time out now. I mean, you need to go back to biology and just like tap out for a while, because now you're pregnant. Well, why, right? And if you feel good and if you want to be there and learning during that phase, or even if you have an 8-month-old or whatever, why does our society think? Why is it this idea that somehow you're written off as leadership caliber now because you must be on the mommy track, and therefore you won't be fully committed and being able to deliver for your company or for your organization or for whatever. But really, there is no reason to be. We know that productivity in human beings is, maximum productivity is roughly 5 to 6 hours a day of maximum really intense, full productivity of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so we work these crazy long days, but really if we would be strategic in how we used our time, there is no incompatibility between high productivity and innovation and leadership and excellence and having children and having caregiving responsibilities. But
exactly.
We've created all of these workplace cultures and all of these organizations that are boxed in around one man's kind of a lifestyle. And it doesn't even service men well, because men have so many different hats they also want to wear as fathers and as, sons and caregivers and coaches for whatever little league, or just, being a supportive co-parent, and being a primary co-parent is another bigger trend we're seeing, even in the young men in Japan. So we need to morph and learn from this. And I think how you brought that into the programs was really clear. Very, very present in how the thoughtfulness that went into the design. And I remember I was having a conversation about how, and training in Japan, when you go to a training program, when you go to a kenshu, it is so bureaucratic and technocratic and technical skills being taught a lot of the time. And you were saying how you really wanted it to be more of a holistic leadership framework, not just come and get a skill, a technical skill, and then we send you home and you've learned how to do, use the computer or use Microsoft Word. And that's important too. And we need those kinds of trainings too. But for these academies, it was really like inspiring their minds. And we've lost our guest temporarily, but I imagine she will be joining back on the feed. So we will stay tuned. And in the meantime, I will share about the many ways that I learned as a research through this participatory action research project, where we had the opportunity to, I was able to meet these individual women, roughly 90 to 95 women from all across Tohoku, women who were engaged in rebuilding their own cities, they were engaged in rebuilding, and they were recognized within their cities as change agents locally. And they were encouraged to be nominated to join the Grassroots Academy program, and they were selected in some ways because of their leadership and recognition locally. And they were brought into the academies as, recognized change agents. And I, from that point, then watched their leadership journey unfold for 3 and 4 years, and also did in-depth interviews with them to get to know them better, to hear in some ways their backstories, to hear where they came from, why they came to the academies, what they were learning through the academies, what their aspirations were, like in 5 years' time, where did they want to be? And so we sort of started the project, the research around 2015 was the first pivotal academy that the Grassroots Academy that NPO Women's Eye hosted, right? And I would then, in my interview, and I think Megumi, we've talked about this, but I would often, as one of my interview questions would be, okay, the international agreement that all member states around the world who care about disaster risk reduction, we just had this big agreement adopted in 2015. The next agreement is going to be adopted in 15 years. So can you add 15 to what your current age is? And then can you just take a minute, and I would give them a couple of minutes to think. And I would say, in 15 years, where will you be? How old will you be? And they would think out loud. We would do this thought partnering. Oh my goodness. Okay. In 15 years, oh, my children have left the home. I no longer have kids living at home. I'm going to be, I assume, still living where I live, but what will I be doing? Will I be engaged in the current projects I'm in, or will my career be different? Will I have, and they would go through this out loud, imagining of going 15 years ahead and go, oh, wow. And I would ask them to set some ideas about what they hope to, how they hope to use that 15 years to fulfill their happiness. And just to say, think about, and then you go away. And as a researcher, I sort of leave it, right? And I leave it, and I would check back with them like a year later or 2 years later. But in the meantime, there's a constant percolating that, oh, in 15 years, where am I going to be? What do I want to do? What did I tell Jackie in that interview? And the percolating in your mind keeps happening, so that they're thinking forward about what their happiness requires, and then how they can help sort of set the course towards that and keep that anchor directing them. And then they would have another leadership academy experience with Women's Eye. And there was just this interesting leadership blossoming that I would see. And so it's this, how do we support each other through, like you say, if we circle back, Megumi, to your mentoring of the young woman from the young teenage girl from the orphanage, just even allowing to hold the space of asking different questions about what does your happiness require? Where do you want to be? And how do you want to end up in 15 years? And then how do you think about just focusing on you? If now your children are gone, where do you situate yourself back as the center of your journey, right? And I think that was so interesting for Seattle. That was like hands down.
That was exactly, I was thinking, that's really, the Seattle program also, I think, impacted you. And all of the participants, and including me as well, that's through the program, we really try to see, not learning from outside, but just try to see yourself, how you really feel, what's your voice inside you, what really desire you, what do you want to do in your life, kind of week long journey of yourself.
And we heard each other. We heard each other share.
Oh,
right?
yes.
About what is our highest calling in life here on this earth? What is our highest calling? And then we heard each other, and we believed each other. We believed what was told and shared, and said, great, that sounds fabulous. Like, yes, we want to support you in those efforts, whatever it is you want to do. You choose. So you have full sovereignty to go forward with your pathway of self-determination, to choose your journey, and then all of the rest of us bearing witness and honoring what they said as their choice, right?
Yes.
So powerful.
So I think, so we kind of realized that it's not just learning from outside, what's the leadership, how we can support each other, but also just to see yourself, to hear your voice, why you are doing this, why do you really want to do, and just be authentic of yourself. And it comes to what you want to do, and it comes what you want to do next. So I hope that I'll be doing for next 15 years like that.
Yes. me too, right? I mean, it launched certainly for me this quest to go back to my feminist philosophical roots of what passions me as somebody believing in diversity and feminist thinking and thought leadership, and then bringing that to society. And I had gotten too far removed from that even in my academic journey. And I really found that recentering in Seattle with everyone, and it was so amazing.
Yeah. So, but then that's why we're planning for the April 11th event as well.
We are indeed.
We are, both of us, planning and creating this event. I hope everyone will join us.
Yes.
Not from Japan, but from the States and wherever they are.
We will have simultaneous translation, and we will be hearing all of the stories of these amazing, impressive change agents, young women from the grassroots of Tohoku. We're going to be holding this 1 month after the anniversary, so on April 11th. In the morning in Japan, but in the evening on April 10th. For everyone joining us from North America. We will be sharing that information shortly. And maybe we can close, Megumi, if you had one pivotal message or insight or learning journey from your experiences of the last 10 years working with young women leaders in Tohoku and through your own journey, what would you want for people to think about moving forward?
So I will just say that just try everything you want to try. and you don't need to be afraid. It's okay to make a mistake. You learn so much from mistakes and failing, and it's okay, and ask help if you fail. And then you get to, it's an opportunity to have a really good relationship with someone when you are really in a bad place and someone helps you, and that's the real friend. And I've been through that. And just listen to your own voice and enjoy.
Good. That was amazing. And the pivotal phrase I kept from the Seattle experience was jibun ni mukiao. Jibun ni mukiao. We had time. We took time to meet ourselves and to turn inwards. And so what you just said, to listen to your own voice and your own desires, I think is exactly what our heart desires, right? How do we go back to honoring that? Is the best takeaway ever. And for today's guests, we will leave you with that inspirational point and goal that we just need to keep going back to listening to what our heart desires. So I wish to thank Megumi for an amazing interview that, of course, we ran a little bit over time because there was just too much to share and talk about that I couldn't fit, and I didn't want us to cut short. So thank you for that. And I will now give a quick shout out to the Enjoy team, who, of course, helps make all of these different things and all of the magic happen for this live stream and for all of the different projects we're building as a company. And so I have listed all of those wonderful individuals who are collaborators and who've given their time and energy and talents to support Enjoy's mission. And you can read about that as you listen to the send-off song that I will now be sharing as we close off our lovely interview, volume 7 here of Diversity Rocks Innovation. Thank you so much, Megumi.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The window in my parlor shines on my favorite turn as white as my hair. So many years older, a frosty color has touched my skin, but I am a sapling inside a giant evergreen. Wonder and doubt, but I've softened at the edges, my laugh line spread out. The voices of my youth still sing with the river so clear. The river and I are everlasting, both headed elsewhere, but we'll